All right, everyone, the Democratic Party is insane. Well, I could just say that's about all, peace out, and then cut the video, but at the hazard of being too short, I think I'll try to explain their new gripe, their new grift, the new thing that they're doing that is, I mean, completely off the wall. Have you heard of the No Glory for Hate Act? It was sponsored by some Democrats, and the basic idea is that as far as federal land goes, and this doesn't apply to states, it doesn't apply to private entities, so keeping that in mind, as far as like federal land goes and stuff, if a president or official has been impeached twice, which is Donald Trump, essentially, they're not allowed to lie in state, and they're not allowed to have like monuments and shit named after them and stuff, in the federal sense. I'm thinking to myself, how much Trump derangement syndrome can you possibly have, number one? How can you even conceive of the possibility that this will pass, number two? And number three, supposedly, this is according to the leader of the Democratic Party, which is ostensibly Joe Biden, they're interested in unity. We need to come together. We've suffered for years with toxic rhetoric and Trump making evil tweets and stuff. You know, other than the fact that the Senate exonerated him, so technically he shouldn't be banned by Twitter. He was being toxic. He said mean things. He ripped up all the toys. Oh my God, he's a terrible person. Let's be together. We're all Americans. Let's be unified as one. This was basically his campaign slogan. Well, man, you dog-faced pony soldier, you know, fat, do some more push-ups and then we'll unify or something. The problem is that that's directly contravened by this particular kind of legislation. This is not going to unify anyone. I guess the idea, in the more broad sense, is that anyone who has been considered to have committed crimes against the United States can't be memorialized on the federal level. So be it. I see two major problems. The first has to do with the unity message being contravened. That's obvious. The second one, though, is just because the legislature, which is a partisan entity at this point, the legislature no longer functions like it did maybe 100 years ago. It's become nothing more than party politics, straight line voting, and bullshit like that. What this does essentially is that the legislature would be granting itself the power to disappear a person, to literally have the ultimate capstone of cancel culture, simply because the legislature in and of itself has determined that you're already guilty. Well, all it requires for impeachment is a simple vote by the House of Representatives, a simple majority. It's not necessary that you have a supermajority. It's not necessary that the Senate recognize that the charges have validity. It's not necessary that the president signs off on it. It's not necessary that there be a trial. All you have to do is have a simple partisan vote. That's all that it requires. One extra representative and it passes. The idea then would be that the House of Representatives would be grabbing more power for themselves. This is how empires can decline. You see the different points of government are each trying to grab more power for themselves, other than SCOTUS, ironically enough. You've noticed they've been much more demure, much quieter in the last few years. Biden is ruling by executive order. The House of Representatives is vastly attempting to expand its power. It's the Senate, under Leahy at this point ostensibly, and supposedly Manchin, who's really just Pelosi's lapdog, they're obviously throwing their weight around. This is an imperial era that we're living in. You've got an imperial presidency. You've got an overly powerful and overly ambitious legislature, and the things that they're doing in the name of stop Trump, Trump is evil, are themselves evil. They're fascistic. In fact, the United States at the moment is under the occupation of a technical fascist regime. There's a fusion of corporate and government power. It's number one. If you ask any leftists, this is the ironic part, the leftists are the ones that claim that, oh, the Democrats, they're a right-wing party too. Well, then as far as the official Wikipedia definition of fascism, okay, the United States is under the control of a far-right regime, according to you, not according to me, that fuses government and corporations. How is this not a form of fascism according to your own self-appointed definitions? That's the funny part. People like me, like a libertarian, I don't recognize it necessarily as fascism in that Wikipedia sense, but I do recognize it as fundamentally authoritarian, if not totalitarian. It's a corrupt government that doesn't really deserve to be in power, and it's becoming malfunctioning. It's becoming dysfunctional to the point where it's no longer capable of governing in the sense that it would actually represent the people that it's supposed to represent. I always figured, and I know I'm naive for figuring this, as a kid of the 90s, knowing a time before the Cold War ended, and it was, America first all the time, because that was the only slogan you could have. Coming from that era, I always figured that people should be represented by the entities that they're paying. If you pay a person, the expectation is you're getting something out of it, correct? Well, that's what taxpayers do to the government, and instead the government wants, more NAFTAs and shit like that. It stopped representing us when Ronald Reagan left office. Since then, Republican or Democrat, all the presidents have been failures other than Donald Trump. That's why they're trying to tear apart his legacy. They're afraid that he's going to become a lightning rod, a figure, a symbol. They're not afraid of him, the man. They're afraid of Donald Trump, the symbol, becoming something wider and larger. Even if he dies, he would still be sort of the face of a revolution by people who are pissed off at the system. Really, his election was about people being pissed off at a system, and who can blame them? It didn't work for most Americans. For the working class, the middle class, upper middle class, for anyone except for the very bottom of society that get the welfare breadcrumbs and the 1%ers that get everything else, everyone else got screwed. Like 80% of the population, 85% are fucked under globalism. And this isn't just a uniquely American problem. We need to understand this sort of thing, the No Glory for Hate Act, is just a symptom of a much larger problem that goes way beyond our national borders. That same globalism is in sway elsewhere. When the TPP, for example, got torn up by Trump, when he said, no, I'm not going to sign that because it's stupid, the TPP didn't go away. It just became a different bill that precluded the United States from being part of it. It was still passed, and a bunch of Asian countries signed on to it. The whole point of that is to allow a billionaire in Japan and a billionaire in the Philippines to screw one another's populations more easily and not have to worry about legal repercussions. That's the only thing that it means. It's not a free trade deal. It's a wheel and dealing deal. It's a bullshit deal. And I have no doubt whatsoever, by the way, that the TPP in some form will be revived under a new name, and it'll be called the Gold Standard of Trade Deals by Hillary Clinton again, I'm sure. It'll be vaguely retooled and given a new title, and Beijing Biden will sign us onto it. Hopefully the legislature decides not to actually officiate it. That's the hope. It's not the expectation necessarily. I have no doubt that that'll happen, because these people have lost their minds. We want unity for the United States. Hey, let's pass an act that is explicitly dedicated towards one individual who happens to still be headline news every single day because Biden's so boring. That's what this is about. This isn't how you unify a country. They're not interested in unifying people. If people were unified, they wouldn't vote for this bullshit. They'd grow class consciousness and shit like that, and a civic consciousness, and they'd vote in their own self-interest instead of voting for morons like Joe Biden. That's about all. Peace out.